Well, hi everyone. Welcome to the New England Racing Show, Manchester, New Hampshire, Channel 23, also on YouTube. And like us on Facebook, you'll get the show automatically on your Facebook page. And I'm your host, Bill Sturgis. Well, we're going to continue the interviews from the Racers Expo last month down in Marlborough, Mass. We have like 25 interviews, and we're going to start with that right now. We have the first one is Ed St. Germain, Marketing Director of Seekonk
the Racers
Speedway.
Expo in beautiful Marlborough,
And that's Jack
Massachusetts,
Garut
the Best
doing
Western
the
Convention
interviewing
Center.
for us.
We're joined now by the Marketing Director for a place that euphemistically in the past was simply called the Cement Palace. We're talking about Seekonk, Massachusetts, one and only Seekonk Speedway, the Vendetti name forever associated with that. But their marketing director, Ed St. Germain, joins us. And first of all, thanks so much for coming out in this beautiful winter day.
Thanks for having us. It's a beautiful day here. The weather is perfect, and I hope that everyone's having a great time at the show.
What's your takeaway when you walk around, Ed, and you see racers finally coming out of the woodwork? You know, Punxsutawney Phil came out, saw his shadow. Unfortunately, we've got 6 more weeks of winter, but everybody's getting a little itchy to get back to the racetrack.
I've seen a lot of people out here who are familiar faces with Seekonk that seem very excited about the upcoming year. We opened our registration up last Monday, and we've had a phenomenal response just over the last week alone, with a lot of new cars coming in, anxious to check out the track. A lot of our existing cars and champions coming back for another try, another kick at the bucket, more or less. We're looking forward to a great season.
You know, when you take a look historically, especially in the New England area, there's the Thompsons, there's the Waterfords, there's the Staffords, and then there's the Seekonk. And Seekonk has this identity of its own. If you had to explain to somebody that's never been to Seekonk what separates it from others, how would you do that?
Individual, close, short track racing at its best. It's diving into the corners. It's a handling and a finesse track that people just love because it's action. These guys are out there turning every 1.2, 1.5 seconds. It's just a blast. It's not the long straightaways that some people are used to. It's quick turns.
It also, every time that I've been there, having raced there as well, it creates an environment where it isn't. It's tight quarters racing, but as you said, because of the nature of the third of the mile and the way it's that big oval with the banking, there is really no chance to rest. So it requires, as they say, a driver to get up on the wheel.
Yep, you have to get up on the wheel and you have to stay up on the wheel. It just creates a lot of great action for our fans and the competitors alike.
Let's talk a little bit about the divisions that you're going to bring forth in 2014. Tell me about them.
We got our Pro Stocks as our featured top division again. We have our late models, which follow the ACT rules. We have Street Stocks, which are sponsored by Sims Metal Management this year as a new divisional sponsor. We have our Sport Trucks, which is continuing to climb in numbers, and we're looking forward to another record-breaking number as far as truck counts go for that series. On our Friday nights, we have our Pure Stocks. We have the Nick's Pit Stops Legend Series. We have the Sport Fours, and then we have our 2 youth divisions for 750 and a 600 class of the Mini Cup divisions, which is sponsored by Mike's Mini Cup right out here, right outside the hall there. We're also bringing back the Valenti Modified Series for 3 races again this year, with the little change in the scenario being they're going to be on our opening day this year as opposed to our DAV Fall Classic.
The common thread for all of us that are associated with motorsports is there's the Ultimate, there's the NASCARs, and there's the Indy cars, and there's the Tudor Sports Car Series motorsports at the top level. But then there's this group, and it's, as Pete Zanardi once said, they are the athletes that the fans can not only see but touch, and not only touch but know. They may be the guy at the local store, the local gas station or auto repair shop, and on a weekend he becomes that weekend warrior. When you go out and you're marketing Seekonk Speedway, especially to new people, what do you sell them?
Sell them the chance to get to know the athletes. When you follow a major league sports team, it's not the same. You are familiar with the brand, you're familiar with the image, but you don't get to know them. It's very rare that you would get the opportunity to go and shake their hands or follow them on a weekly basis, go up there and get an autograph from them, have them sign your shirt. It's just a really cool thing to follow them. You get to follow the drama at the track as it sets up in the weekly. It becomes like a weekly story, and it's a story that unfolds over 24 weeks from May to October, and then you get to do it again next year. It's a cool thing that can become part of your life instead of just a passing thing to do.
If somebody is strolling across the internet and sees this interview, you may remember a great show from Bowman Gray Stadium in Winston-Salem, North Carolina on the History Channel that was called Madhouse. Seekonk Speedway has the same sort of connection because it's generation after generation after generation that not only frequents the stands but also sits in those seats.
Sits in the seats, sits in the drivers. We have a lot of third and fourth generation racers. Now you see a lot of the kids coming up who are now second and third generation, and you know that their kids are going to be the fourth generation, and it keeps growing and growing. The fans, the spectators, the drivers, everybody, it's generation after generation after generation. Now what we're looking to do is help introduce new fans so that they can be a part of this great thing of short track racing that we have going on in the Northeast.
Do you think, as we continue our conversation with Ed St. Germain, marketing director for Seekonk Speedway, do you think, as I see and as I look at the landscape, I'm seeing more and more short tracks instituting what I call youth initiatives, whether it's the series on Monday nights at Stafford Speedway or the Wednesday series at Waterford, trying to get some entry level for the youth of America. You're now doing it on your Friday night shows. How successful has it been, and how important is it for the long-term health of short-track racing?
It's critical. It's the major factor leading into short-track racing. We have so many of it. It's our 9th year doing mini cups in a row now. So this is the 9th year. That division has become a feeder for not only our Friday nights going up into Sport 4s, but a lot of them are now jumping into the Legends for a year, and then they're making a transition into late models and pro stocks, as you see with drivers like Brandon Dion, Nicholas Scola. These kids are making a nice, smooth transition. These are all mini cup champions. So many of our mini cup drivers are moving up into the top ranks. It's probably 25 to 30% of the field right now is previous drivers that have started here. There's also a lot of great drivers that have started there that have moved on to other series and are driving for Whalen Tour and Valenti as well.
I'm going to tell a story, and you're too young to remember this, but the great Anthony Vendetti, and I was fortunate enough to get to know the family and work alongside them. But this, as the story goes, he was one of the ultimate promoters at Seekonk Speedway. He came up with the idea back at the turn in the 50s where powerboat racing had become very, very popular. And being in that seaside area of Fall River and out there, Seekonk, and because of the nature of the way the place is built, flooded the entire racetrack up to the concrete walls and instituted and introduced powerboat racing. Do you remember that?
17 million gallons of water. Now, I don't think the conservation societies would let us do that again right now, but it'd be great to see. We've had many, many requests when we have a rain out. Why can't we do powerboat racing?
When you look at the challenges that short track racing faces, is there one that stands out in your mind, Ed?
Cost. It's a very expensive sport, and it's tougher and tougher on families and race teams to find a sponsorship that enables them to keep going. You know, we value every single race team that shows up every day. We're trying to put together plans that makes their life easier. One of the biggest projects we're working right now is a way to expand our pits. And we're going to expand our pits out into the parking lot, a total of 200 feet and 400 feet and 200 feet, that would enable all race teams to keep their haulers. And I realized that we're one of the last tracks to have a setup like that with a contained pit area, but now they'd be able to come in and just work out of their hauls instead of having to load and unload. And this is just something that the track isn't going to recoup their investment on in any short period of time. It's going to be a long haul, but it does make it a better environment for the race teams.
Let's talk for a moment about Seekonk and specifically the decisions that have been made through the course of the years and how it reflects back on what the Vendetti family wants Seekonk to stand for.
It's more about just promoting family values and making sure that it's a family racetrack that creates a positive family environment. You want the youth, you want a mom to be able to bring her kids there to watch her husband or neighbor or friend race and feel comfortable in the stands. You don't want to have people misbehaving or acting out of sorts that doesn't represent the way the Vendetti family would want them to be act. If Mrs. Vendetti was standing in the stands next to you, we want our fans to enjoy themselves just as no matter what turn they're sitting in. And with a full turn of seating, it's plenty of seats available, trust me.
We're looking forward to it, your opening day?
May 4th.
There you go. Ed St. Germain from Seekonk Speedway. We'll be back with more interviews here from the Racers Expo very shortly. Racers Expo as we get the snow off our shoulders and start to look forward to racing in earnest in the Northeast. And when you say Northeast racing and you say super modified racing, you cannot complete that sentence without saying Oswego Speedway. And one of their aces is with us now, Otto Sitterly. And Otto, we have a kind of a unique situation. We'll get into super modified racing, but the guy that you drive for, we know him euphemistically as Johnny Greenbeans from down in Florida, but he has a long time tie with Davey Hamilton and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. What's it like to drive for a guy that just has an abiding passion for open wheel racing?
It's an interesting situation, Jack, is what it is. It's a really good relationship between Johnny and myself, and it's really it's a pleasure to drive for somebody that's he's got a unique view of it. He's been to a ton of races all around the country in different forms of racing, and he's not afraid to spend the money.
Let's talk a little bit. You have lived through the best of times and the most challenging times at Oswego. And I've always looked at it and said Oswego Speedway was a classic example of a facility and an operation in transition that had to redefine itself. Where you see Oswego is now, what's the outlook for the future?
Oh, I think the outlook's very bright. I mean, I went there for the first time in 1995 to drive, and the Carusos owned it then. And then it was sold off to the Furlong and Joya families, and those were the years that it wasn't necessarily the best. I mean, they tried really hard, but I think resources and just timing played a part. And now the Teresi boys own it, and the resources are there, and I think their ideas are really good. And the car count, everything is going in the right direction. So I just, I talk with Nicotra. He's pretty tight with the Teresis, and I think things are going a real good direction.
Let's talk about the future of super modified racing. What sticks out in your mind that makes it so singularly popular?
Well, popular is because of the uniqueness of the cars. I mean, they were once upon a time sort of hand-built one-offs, and you had the Graves guys, and then you would have a bigger team, Muldoon or maybe Champagne back in the day, or Swift, that would build a car or two, and then they would sell them off, and they would build their new car. Where now, even though they are still unique, you only have a small amount of builders, even though there's a couple of them up there, Joe Hawksby and Paul Koloka from Extreme. These guys are building cars, and Hawksby's capable of building 5, 6, 7 cars in a season. So, I mean, even though they're unique, they still, it's getting to the point where they can produce some cars.
In its heyday, in the Champagne days, in the Bentley Warren days, well, we can't say Bentley Warren because, my God, he still keeps running and coming out of retirement. But in those days, as you say, the hand-fabricated one-offs that populated Oswego, I think that's been part of the transition, Otto, is creating an industry, though, where there still is that unique look so that they all don't become an out-of-the-box copy one of the other. From a driver's standpoint, can you tell the difference between one chassis and the other?
Well, I would say so, even though the car that I've driven, the kind of car that I've driven since 2006 has been a Hawk chassis, and they've all been relatively the same. But I mean, definitely there's a big difference between the older style cars and these new cars. It's really hard to say what the other ones would be like if I was to jump in one of the other manufacturers. They're all pretty good. People
in the southern New England area, they get to see the ISMA series. That's a winged series. And as exciting as that is, and it certainly is exciting to see those articulated wings and what it does for the grip and the downforce of these cars. When you go up to Oswego, you're up on the wheel because you don't have the benefit of that additional downforce. There are no wings on those super modifieds.
Right. It's a whole different animal. I've driven with the wing with ISMA and the MSA series out west. And it's a lot of fun to drive with a wing, and definitely, it doesn't matter what you're driving, you better have a good handling car. And but at Oswego, it's a totally different thing with the amount of horsepower and the lack of downforce really versus a wing car. It's amazing when one week we ran there, this is a couple years ago, our opening night, we ran with a wing series. And, we ran mid-pack. We don't have a good wing program, but we ran probably top 10. And we come back the next week with our top-of-the-line non-wing car, and it's amazing how little time you're on the gas pedal without that top wing on it.
I'm going to go back in history a little bit, and there always was a connection between super modifieds and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Now, maybe some of it was just cosmetic, but before we went to purpose-built chassis in Indy cars and the spec nature of the racing, you had an awful lot of guys that came from sprint cars and from super modifieds. I think the last guy that actually made it, we had Doug Didiero, who certainly tried out there. We had Double O Joe Gosick. Do you miss the fact that now that you wheel a super modified, there isn't that direct connection to where you could go and maybe race in an iconic place like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway?
Well, I mean, most definitely. When it occurred to me that I was maybe perhaps missing something that happened in the past, I knew about all of it, but I went to Indy for the first time like 5 or 7 years ago. I went out there with Johnny, and then when I saw everything through Davey's deal, and I saw all of it, and then knowing Joe and racing against Davey and just all the guys, Didiero, I've raced against him a bunch, knowing all these guys, Bentley, and knowing that they did nothing any different than I, and they ended up going to Indy, that's when all of a sudden, when I know Nicotra was out there and I know all these guys, that's when all of a sudden the reality was there. Geez, if I was 20 or 25 years earlier, I possibly would have had the shot to go out there and race.
How frustrating is it? Because you're a racer.
It's definitely frustrating, but I'm also I'm very realistic, and it's not possible these days.
You know, a lot of people are what I call fendered fans. They don't understand the nuances with open wheels and the way that you have to go about business. Now, I know we got Nerf bars, we got all that, but still, you can intimidate, but you can't really rub that hard, can you?
No, not really. That's one thing. I came from some other classes, and then when I came to a super modified, that's like the number one thing that I learned very quickly was that narrow little bumper didn't line up very good with that narrow back bumper on the car in front of you, and that's, contact is pretty much nil.
I will tell you, and I'll share with you, one thing, Johnny has always said, just so you know, he said he'll pay for all the front bumpers that you bend, but he ain't paying for any of the rear bumpers to get bent.
Yeah, exactly. It makes sense. It's all relative.
Otto, enjoy the rest of the day here at the Racers Expo, and thanks so much for stopping by.
All right, thanks a lot, Jack.
This is Expo, the 2014 edition, and delighted to be here. And I am with Barry Gray, a name that is synonymous with pro stock racing here in New England. A gentleman that has had himself a pretty darn good career in full-body competition. And, Barry, welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Nice to see you here today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let's talk about your career. Your career started at the age of 29, which is kind of late compared to most competitors. Why the late start?
I used to help guys with their race cars and whatnot, but we were never really into it. And I had the desire, and we went out one day, me and a couple friends, to buy a washing machine, and came home with a race car, and that's where it all began.
How did that work at home?
Well, when I came home and told the wife, bad news is no washing machine, but good news is we have a race car, she kind of looked at me and didn't think I was telling the truth, but she found out when she came to see it.
It was the start of something special for sure, because you've had yourself a very solid career with a lot of wins, over 100 feature wins, championships at Riverside, out in Agawam, and of course at Monadnock Speedway, New Hampshire state champion back in 2007. Now, the Granite State Pro Stock Series. Let's talk a little bit about that. Finally got rolling last year, coming off the 2013 season, looking ahead to what is now a 10-race schedule. Your thoughts?
You know what? I think it's a great deal for us pro stock guys to get together. It's a great series that they got going on. There's a really good group of good guys there, fast cars, very competitive. And it's a lot of fun. I like going to different tracks. We were at Riverside for years. We were at Monadnock for years, and now just going to different tracks and different setups and learning different things. It's interesting. It makes a lot of fun.
You just said a key word: setups. Monadnock Speedway. A lot of people cannot get adapted to that. I don't know how so much in pro stocks, but I've found out with the modifieds, some guys just can't get around that place, and some guys dominate.
That place is just very tough. It's a great racetrack. Both turns are different. You got to be smooth there. A lot of very good guys go there and have a tough time with it.
Looking ahead now and looking forward with the upcoming season, you're going to be kicking things off down at Thompson. You've got a lot of laps down at Thompson.
Believe it or not, I don't have that many laps down at Thompson. That's one of the few tracks I haven't run a ton at. It's definitely a learning experience for us there. We won the pole there one time. We've done okay there. I like the speed. I like the difference, but you got to get the car so it feels comfortable and you can be fast there.
Any particular racetrack that you favor, would much rather run at, and what you don't want to see?
You know what? I like running at them all. Obviously, I'm kind of a master at Monadnock, so every time we go there, unfortunately, my guys think, oh, this is a gimme. We're going to just go here and win. Well, it's not like that. There's so much good competition. You're not going to get it done that easy. But any different racetrack, like I said, I like to go to. And this year here, there's a couple of. We got Lee on the schedule this year. We got White Mountain. I haven't been there forever. I love running there, so it should be good.
You say a master at Monadnock. What does it take to master Monadnock?
I guess a lot of laps and just being very patient up there, just learning what to do. The track has its own characteristic. There's no grip in the track. It's just very tough. You got to be smooth and easy up there.
Good to see you here at Races Expo. Good luck in 2014.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you here. They got a nice show here, and we're looking forward to 14.
All right, Barry Gray, our guest here at Races Expo. And our next guest is a name that is synonymous with racing here in New England. We've got so many short track second-generation competitors. This is a second-generation promoter. And Bobby Weber Jr. is joining with us now. His dad and his family, Star Speedway in Epping, New Hampshire. They've been at it since, well, let's see. I went to work there in 1981, I believe it was, when Dad took over Star Speedway. And, well, we go back a long way. Watched you grow up there.
Yeah, you were right. It was 1981. It was the winter of 1980. He had his company in Burlington, Mass. And one night he came home and said, that place we go to every Saturday night? Well, we own it now. And he was afraid of the Supermodifieds being taken out of racing at Star Speedway, and he figured the only way he could save it was to buy the Speedway, and we've had it ever since.
As I think back, Supers and Modifieds were on the billing back then, and your dad had to make a decision as to which direction he wanted to go and make it the top Class A division, if you will, and he stuck with the Supers. That's a decision he's glad he made over the years.
Yeah, as long as I remember Star Speedway, I remember Ollie Silva was my hero when I was growing up. Would always sit down in the first end of the grandstands by the barn there, and I'd always have to run down to watch Victory Lane when Ollie would win, because that's what I remember when I was a kid. But my dad's beginning with Supermodifieds, he was good friends with Jim Cheney, and he'd always go to Oswego, and he was partners with Jim in a couple of cars and everything. Jim was always one of those, not a low buck competitor, but he needed some help, and Dad was always there to help him, and that's where my dad's love for the Supers began, and he still loves them to this day.
As a youngster, Bobby, when did Dad start delegating responsibility to you and, kind of reeling you in to help him operate the racetrack?
I've been there. I don't think I've missed a Saturday at Star probably since about 1981. And I went to college, obviously, and I missed maybe a few days there. But I remember I'd come home on the weekends to work, and over the past probably, I'd say since we've been back after everybody, since our incident that happened, with trying to lease the place out, and that was it's in the past now. But since then, it's kind of been Star has been my area to run, and Hudson is my dad's, and it kind of works out good that way.
Let's look at the 2014 season. Last year, you had a good year. Jacob Dorr was your modified champion. There was talk that the mods might be out, but now you're going to have them there.
Yeah, it was a tough decision. It was one of those ones where you hate to keep blaming the economy for everything, but you have to look at what is feasible for a racetrack to be able to do to operate. I talked to Red about it a lot, and a lot of nights on Fridays with running my 350, Red and I would just sit there and start talking business, though. And I wasn't going to have them. I have a great class, the Outlaws, but the Modifieds were going to work together to make something feasible for the competitors and for us as well to make it a good season. They have 10 events this year, including the SBM race.
SBM has really turned into something special.
Yeah, that's been, I still have to give Kevin Rice all the credit in the world for, he came to me 3 years ago saying, let's do a race to let everybody know Star is back. And, we coined the catchphrase SBM 125, and it's caught on. And, it's just become one of those races that it seems like everybody in New England now knows it, and it continues to grow. And I think with the Tri-Track Series this year, it's going to be even 10 times bigger.
Let's talk about yourself. Outside the promotion aspect of this whole thing, you're competitive and racing up at Lee USA Speedway in the small block Supermodifieds up there, and you got a partnership going with a team out of Epping, New Hampshire, which is, of course, right, you know where that is. And things have been coming together for you. You got a couple of cars, I understand, going into 14.
Yeah, last year it was a tough year. We had our share of rookie mistakes, crashes, and problems that we had. But this year, we're a lot more dedicated to doing good. We got 2 complete cars for this year. We got one kid, Ricky DiMatteo, that he's full-time just putting everything together, and Rod and I are hoping for a better year this year and a lot more dedicated to, I'm trying to keep myself straight and go to the gym every day and be more prepared. That was one of my big problems last year, is you really realize how much it does take to drive a race car.
Plus drive, plus promote, and you've also got a business, landscaping business, and you also work at Logan Airport in the freight business, and sometimes I wonder how you were able to do it. I think many nights at Star you showed up with very, very little sleep.
Yeah, I got kind of hectic a few times. A lot of times I'd work the night shift on Friday. I work every day, but Friday would be the busiest. I'd work overnight at airport, go to work at Star during the day, head to Lee, race at Lee, jump out of the car, change my fire suit, put on my work clothes, head to the airport, work, then head right back to Star.
Whatever it takes to make it work, right, Bob? Listen, you've got a something that's very special that you represent at the races, and you're working very hard to make it even better than it was last year. Talk about it.
Charity has always been a big part of what I do at racing. I feel like it's a good thing to give back, and I always was involved with Racing Against Cancer. Now this is the second year we're involved with a charity called For Jake's Sake. It's to help kids that have autism get the therapy that they need. I never realized that autism therapies were not covered by insurance, and the average cost for a family is $60,000 per year for these therapies. And my friend that started it, Dawn Kobach, she fortunately is able to afford the therapies, but she sees these other families not being able to afford the therapies that these kids need, and through that she's able, last year they distributed about $300,000 to families to be able to get the therapies the kids needed, and anything we can do to help them we're going to do. And we got a big raffle going. We're selling tickets here at the show. There's lots of prizes from Foxwoods to about every track in New England and restaurants around New England. Everybody's helping us participate in it.
Great cause. Keep up the good work. Good luck in 2014.
Thank you, John, and I look forward to seeing you this summer.
All right, Bobby Weber Jr., second generation.
Well, I hope you find these interviews interesting. I sure do. I could listen to them all day. We have about 11 more interviews we're going to show to you over the next 3 weeks. Just to give you a little preview, next week we're going to have Mike Parks, who is the founder of the Granite State Pro Stock Series, Anthony Nacella, NEMA midget driver, former midget driver, and Valente Modified Series driver. John McKennedy was a Valente champ and also drives a Supermodified for ISMA. Gary D. Gaspari Jr., a 7-time Seekonk late model champ. Russ Hersey runs at Monadnock. Randy Cabral, multi-time NEMA midget champ, and his owner, Timmy Bertrand. We have Chris Correll, Pete Kayer from the New England Truck Series. John Zitch, NEMA champ from last year. Sean Foster, an SK modified racer at Stafford, and he has his own video series called Short Track Racer, which I checked out. It's very entertaining. Follows him during the year in his racing at Stafford. We have Chris Purley, multi-time ISMA Supermodified champ. A couple of kids, Mike Toner and Madison Burchell, Mini Cup drivers from Seekonk. And Miguel Aponte, who owns Ratchet Head Garage, which was an interesting interview. So those are all coming up. over the next 3 weeks, and you join us, and you'll get to hear all the interviews. So thanks a lot. See you next week.